Now let's look at that image processing, and instead of dots this time, let's look at the idea of surfaces and panels taking that image. So first of all, I'll just review what's happening up here with the logic switch. I've now turned the top one off to false and turned the bottom one on to true. If we were to relabel these, you could say this was rename node panels. And this one would be dots. And I'm going through that only because if you leave these, this dynamo definition could be very useful to you, but it might not occur to you to use it for months, weeks or months or whatever. And then if you come back to it, if you've really recorded all of these pieces of information, it'll be much easier to come up to speed with what you've done. Anyway, so we've turned on the surfaces and panels, and we're feeding that data into the geometry so we've got the array, the points by coordinate fed in as geometry, and then the y-axis, the idea of the depth of that, the offset of those dots. Let's see if I can turn those on, see if they show up. There's our dots now, and our dots are still in the array in the x and z axis, but now they're translated out of position in the y-axis according to the brightness that's fed into here, and then multiplied by something just to give it more amplitude. So if we wanted these hills to be higher or shallower, we would do that by adjusting this in the input to the translate. Anyway, I'll turn these back off again. And what we're doing is, now that we have those dots, we feed it into this surface by points, which is the actual surface or form that I have highlighted. But it's not the only one that's created in the surface and panel box. So here we're feeding in the points. We could do some manipulation about the way the NURBS surface is defined, but just at its default values, it creates this surface for us. And if we go out to, I fed this into the output to Revit. So if we go out to Revit now, that's that form imported into Revit. And I've gone ahead and rendered it just to give it a little, so you get an idea of just the kind of neat surfaces that are generated by that. So going back to Dynamo, we have a couple of other ways we can express that geometry. I'll just turn off the preview for the NURBS by surface. And now that's also fed into some Lunchbox panelizing tools. So I'll turn this on. This is a quad grid. And now we have the geometry of the panels being reported. And I guess what I wanted to address on this one is, if you look at these panels, these are actually not buildable panels. You can see how they're shifting in the geometry because these aren't triangulated. And that's why I've also included this other. I'm going to turn the preview off for this. And now we'll look at it with panels that are triangulated. And that means that they're able to be planar. And actually the surface isn't as attractive because of that reason. They're just planar surfaces. But that's actually buildable geometry of a surface of a wall or ceiling, or what other kind of geometry you might have in mind with using it for. So that gives us an overview. I don't know why we've got dots showing up here too. That's a little bit disturbing. Oh, that's because we're seeing both the panels and points output here. So we'd actually want to turn that off and just feed the panels into something that we could visualize individually. So we have both of these in this kind of overall definition. And the only thing we need to do is to get between the two is flip the logic switch and then control which ones we put to the output of Revit. And the next thing I want to go to is this idea of creating a much more sophisticated idea of putting panels in this place and glass, so we can have both panels and glass according to the kind of image that gets fed into it. And we'll address that in the next clip.